Inside a packed courtroom, the air feels heavy with tension. The wooden benches creak as people shift uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. At the front of the room, towering behind his bench, Judge Richard Holloway sits with an expression of pure authority. He has been in this position for years, and he carries himself as if he is untouchable. His reputation is well known, strict, ruthless, and, though rarely spoken aloud, deeply prejudiced. Before him stands Maya Johnson, a black woman accused of a crime she did not commit. Her posture is straight, her hands clasped in front of her, and though she is calm on the outside, the weight of the moment presses against her. She has been fighting this case for months, forced to defend herself against a system that was never built to protect her. Today is supposed to be the day of her final hearing, but she already knows the judge has made up his mind. Judge Holloway leans forward slightly, adjusting his glasses as he stares at Maya with something between amusement and disdain. "Miss Johnson," he drawls, his voice dripping with condescension. "I've seen people like you come through my courtroom more times than I can count. Always the same story. Always blaming the system, always pretending to be victims." A few quiet gasps ripple through the crowd, but no one speaks up. Maya's defense attorney stiffens beside her but doesn't say a word. The judge shakes his head as if he's tired of dealing with her. "You people never learn," he continues. "You stand here, wasting the court's time, expecting sympathy. But let me tell you something, there's no sympathy here. Not for someone like you." Maya remains silent. She doesn't flinch, doesn't lower her gaze. She has faced men like him before. Men who believe their power makes them untouchable. The judge smirks. "You think standing there with that defiant look on your face is going to change anything? This is my courtroom. My rules. And I don't take kindly to arrogance." He leans back in his chair, tapping his gavel against the wooden desk in front of him. "I could throw the book at you right now," he says. "I could make an example out of you. Remind you where you belong." The murmurs in the courtroom grow louder. Some spectators avert their eyes, while others watch in stunned silence. No one dares to challenge the judge, not here, not now. But Maya finally speaks, her voice steady and unwavering. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she says, meeting his gaze without fear, "justice is supposed to be blind. But today, it seems to have selective vision." A sharp silence falls over the courtroom. For a brief moment, Judge Holloway's smirk falters. Then, his face twists with anger. He raises his gavel again, this time slamming it down harder. "You will not speak out of turn," he barks. "I suggest you remember your place before I decide to show you just how much power I have." Maya doesn't respond. She simply watches him, waiting. What the judge doesn't know is that his time is almost up. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and follow for more powerful stories like this. You won't believe what happens next. As the handcuffs click into place around Judge Holloway's wrists, the entire courtroom remains frozen in shock. Moments ago, he was the most powerful man in the room, and now he stands with his hands bound, his face twisted in a mix of rage and disbelief. "This is a mistake," he hisses, his voice lower now, as if he's trying to regain control. "You don't know what you're doing." The lead agent steps closer. "Oh, we know exactly what we're doing," he says, his tone unwavering. "You've been under investigation for over a year. Miss Johnson played a crucial role in uncovering the full extent of your corruption." The judge whips his head toward Maya, his eyes narrowing. The arrogance, the untouchable superiority, it's all crumbling. "You," he spits, his voice filled with venom. "This was your plan all along." Maya tilts her head slightly, studying him the way one might study a cornered predator. But there's no fear in her eyes, no hesitation. "Not just mine," she says calmly. "Dozens of people you dismissed, humiliated, and sentenced unfairly helped make this happen. You thought you could manipulate the law forever. You were wrong. The murmurs in the room grow louder. Some spectators nod, whispering among themselves. Others watch in stunned silence, unable to process the sudden shift in power. The prosecutor, who had been working alongside the judge this entire time, shuffles uncomfortably. I wasn't aware of any of this, he stammers, looking at the agents. Surely there's been some misunderstanding. One of the agents pulls out a thick folder and places it on the judge's bench. This contains records of bribes, altered case rulings, and direct evidence of racial discrimination in sentencing, he states. We have signed testimonies, financial records, and wiretap transcripts. There's no misunderstanding. Judge Holloway shakes his head, his usual composure breaking apart with every second. You people, he mutters under his breath, you don't know how things work. I have connections. This will never stick. Maya steps closer, lowering her voice so only he can hear. That's what every man like you says before they fall. The judge clenches his jaw, his breathing uneven. For the first time, he looks afraid. The lead agent gestures toward the side entrance. Escort him out. As the agents tighten their grip on his arms and begin to lead him away, the judge fights against their hold. This is my courtroom, he shouts, his voice desperate now. This is my courtroom. But no one listens. No one moves to defend him. As he is dragged past the defense table, Maya doesn't step back. She simply watches as the man who had tried to break her now faces the consequences of his own actions. Justice has finally caught up to him. As Judge Holloway is led out of the courtroom, the sound of his protests fades behind the heavy doors. The tension lingers in the air, a strange silence settling over the room. Moments ago, he was the one dictating fate from his high bench. Now, he is nothing more than a disgraced man in handcuffs, stripped of his power. Maya stands still, watching the doors for a moment before finally exhaling. She had spent months waiting for this moment, years fighting against the system he represented. Now, the weight she had carried so long feels just a little lighter. The murmurs in the courtroom swell, people turning to one another, whispering in disbelief. Some look at Maya with newfound respect, while others, those who had always been complicit in Holloway's corruption, shift uncomfortably in their seats. The prosecutor, still seated at his table, clears his throat awkwardly. He picks up a pen, sets it down, then looks up at the agents. So, what happens now? He asks, his voice uncertain. The lead agent steps forward, holding up the file once more. Judge Holloway will face federal charges. His assets are already being seized, and further investigations are underway. Any cases he handled that show signs of corruption will be reviewed. A ripple of shock moves through the room. Dozens, maybe even hundreds, of people had been affected by Holloway's biased rulings. Maya turns, scanning the faces around her. She sees former defendants, lawyers who had been forced to play by his rules, families who had walked into this courtroom believing in justice only to leave in despair. She steps forward, her voice calm but firm. This isn't just about one man, she says. It's about the system that allowed him to thrive for so long. How many people sat back and let him do this? How many voices were ignored? How many lives were destroyed because no one wanted to challenge him? The room is silent. No one dares to speak. Maya's gaze moves to the jury box, then to the court clerks, the bailiffs, the attorneys. Corruption like his doesn't happen overnight. It happens when people look away, when those in power assume they're untouchable. One of the defense attorneys, an older man with graying hair, clears his throat. So what do we do? He asks quietly. Maya lets the question hang in the air before answering. We make sure this never happens again. We hold people accountable. We change the way things work. A quiet murmur of agreement spreads through the crowd. Then, An older woman in the back stands up. Her face is lined with years of hardship, but her eyes are sharp, determined. My son was sentenced unfairly by Judge Holloway, she says, her voice steady. What happens to people like him? The agent nods. Every case he touched will be reviewed. If there was bias, those verdicts can be overturned. A few more people stand. A young man, a middle-aged father, a woman clutching a case file. Each of them carries a story of injustice, a history of being silenced. Maya looks at them, then at the agents. Then we start now, she says. There's no celebration, no applause. Just a quiet, determined energy that spreads through the room. A shift. For the first time in a long time, change feels possible. As Maya walks toward the exit, she doesn't look back at the judge's empty chair. She doesn't need to. His reign is over. Justice has been served, but the fight is far from finished. Outside the courthouse, the air is thick with anticipation. Reporters and news crews have already gathered, cameras flashing as they swarm the entrance. The moment Judge Holloway was escorted out in handcuffs, the world outside erupted in chaos. Maya steps onto the courthouse steps, the weight of the moment pressing against her. She expected attention, but not this level of frenzy. Microphones are shoved toward her, voices overlapping as reporters fire questions. Miss Johnson, how long have you been working on this case? Did you know Judge Holloway personally before this investigation? Do you believe this is just the beginning of a larger corruption scandal? Maya raises a hand, signaling for silence. The crowd quiets slightly, cameras still rolling. She takes a deep breath, then speaks. This case wasn't just about Judge Holloway, she says, her voice steady. It was about exposing a system that allowed him to operate unchecked for years. Today, we took one step toward justice. But it's only the beginning. A reporter in the front row, a woman with sharp eyes and a notepad poised, steps forward. Some people are calling you a hero, she says. How do you respond to that? Maya shakes her head. I'm not a hero. I'm someone who refused to stay silent. And I'm not the only one. Countless people fought for this moment, people whose voices were ignored, people who suffered under his rulings. They're the real heroes. The crowd stirs, murmurs passing between them. Some nod in agreement, others scribble notes furiously. Then, from the edge of the gathering, a familiar voice rises. Maya. She turns, spotting the older woman from the courtroom, the one who spoke about her son's unfair sentencing. She pushes through the crowd, her eyes filled with hope and desperation. What about my son? She asks, her voice cracking. He's still in prison because of that man. How long will it take for them to fix what he did? Maya steps closer, placing a hand gently on the woman's shoulder. I don't have an exact answer, she admits. But I promise you, we're not stopping here. We're going to fight until every wrong decision he made is corrected. A few more voices rise, other families, former defendants, people who had been directly affected by Holloway's corruption. The questions aren't about politics or headlines, they're about real lives, real pain, real justice. Maya turns back to the cameras, her expression firm. This isn't just about taking down one corrupt judge, she says. It's about making sure no one else like him ever gets that kind of power again. A heavy silence follows, the weight of her words settling over the crowd. Then, one by one, people begin to clap. It's not the wild applause of a victory rally. It's slow, steady, filled with something deeper than excitement, acknowledgement. Recognition. Determination. Maya looks out at the sea of faces, at the people who have been waiting for justice for far too long. She knows this is only the beginning. The real fight starts now. In the days following the judge's arrest, Maya becomes a symbol of justice, though it's not the kind of fame she ever sought. Reporters follow her wherever she goes, and the pressure to speak out, to continue the fight, weighs heavily on her. Yet, despite the constant attention, Maya keeps her focus sharp, her resolve unwavering. She knows this is far from over. The investigation into Judge Holloway's actions spreads like wildfire. Federal agents scour through his case files, uncovering more evidence of corruption, bribery, and racial discrimination than anyone had anticipated. It turns out, Holloway had been involved in a network of unethical dealings with several other judges and law enforcement officials. News outlets around the country pick up the story, and soon, the case becomes a national sensation. Every headline echoes the same message: a corrupt system is being exposed, and those in power are not invincible. As Maya watches the news coverage, she can't help but feel a sense of vindication. She had spent so long fighting for something that felt impossible. Now, the system she had been up against was unraveling before her eyes. Yet, despite the progress, there's a constant reminder of the work still to be done. Maya visits the prison where the woman from the courthouse, whose son had been unjustly convicted, still waits. The young man's case has been reopened, but the legal process is slow. Justice, it seems, is never a quick fix. When she meets the woman again, the conversation is different. There's no longer desperation in the older woman's eyes, there's hope. "I'm not giving up," she says quietly, her voice trembling but strong. "Thank you for fighting for us." Maya smiles gently. This fight isn't over until everyone who's been wronged gets their day in court. It's a fight she knows will take time. Meanwhile, the courtroom that once echoed with Holloway's arrogant voice is now a place of uncertainty. Attorneys begin to examine cases he presided over, filing motions to reopen trials and challenge rulings that were tainted by his bias. It's a long and grueling process, but Maya remains steadfast. She attends meetings with the families of those affected by Holloway's decisions, offering support, guidance, and, most importantly, a reminder that their voices matter. One afternoon, as she's leaving a meeting with the victims of Holloway's rulings, Maya receives an unexpected call. It's from the FBI agent who had led the operation to arrest the judge. "We've found something else," the agent says, his voice serious. "We've uncovered more evidence linking Holloway to a group of corrupt officials. We need your help to take them down too." Maya pauses, the weight of the request settling in. She knew this was bigger than she'd imagined, but it wasn't just about bringing down one judge, it was about dismantling a system of corruption that had been thriving for years. "I'm in," she responds without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." As she hangs up the phone, she looks out the window. The road ahead is uncertain, and the weight of it all is immense. But she's ready. The fight isn't over. It has only just begun. The weeks that follow are a whirlwind. Maya, now deeply entrenched in the fight for justice, works tirelessly with the FBI and a team of lawyers to track down the corrupt officials who helped enable Judge Holloway's reign of manipulation. The operation expands as more evidence comes to light, revealing a network of powerful figures who have long been pulling strings behind the scenes. As the investigation grows, so does the media attention. Headlines blast across every major news outlet, each one more shocking than the last. "Corruption scandal reaches the highest levels of government," one headline reads. Another follows, "The fall of a corrupt system, who will be next?" Maya, however, stays grounded. Her focus is clear: this isn't just about exposing corruption, it's about ensuring that those who have suffered for years under an unjust system can finally see justice. The courtroom, once a symbol of her oppression, is now where her work truly begins. Motions are filed, cases are reopened, and families of the wronged begin to find hope. Maya finds herself standing next to the families of the wrongfully convicted, their faces full of determination as they face a long road to righting the wrongs of the past. One afternoon, as Maya enters the courthouse for another pivotal hearing, she can't help but feel the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. The success of this case could change everything, not just for the victims of Holloway's actions, but for the entire system. The gallery is packed, journalists filling the room to capture the next chapter of the unfolding story. The air is thick with anticipation as Maya takes her seat, waiting for the hearing to begin. As the judge enters and takes his place on the bench, it's a stark contrast to what it was before. Now, the courtroom is filled with a new sense of possibility. The defendant is no longer a faceless victim, and the prosecutor is no longer an unchallenged figure of authority. Everything has shifted. The case is called, and Maya rises to her feet. She speaks with a sense of purpose, her voice carrying the weight of everything she's fought for, the countless families whose lives have been irrevocably altered by Holloway's actions, the years of pain and loss that have been endured in silence. This isn't just about Judge Holloway, she says, her voice steady but filled with conviction. This is about accountability, about taking a stand against a system that has allowed people like him to manipulate the law for their own benefit. It's about ensuring that no one ever has to face the kind of injustice that these families have endured. She pauses, letting the words sink in before continuing. And it's about making sure the future is different, making sure that every person, regardless of their background or their circumstances, is given the fair treatment they deserve under the law. Her words are met with silence, but it's not the silence of doubt or disbelief. It's the silence of people listening, understanding. Then, as the hearing unfolds, something miraculous happens. The room begins to shift, the atmosphere changing in real time. As evidence is presented, new witnesses testify, and the corrupt network begins to unravel. The sense of hope grows stronger. Maya knows this is only the beginning, but it's a monumental step forward. As the day draws to a close, Maya leaves the courthouse, her heart pounding in her chest. There's no time to celebrate, not yet. There's still much work to be done. But before she steps into her car, she pauses. Looking back at the courthouse, she feels a deep sense of accomplishment, of knowing that she's played a part in changing something that was once thought unchangeable. The fight continues, and Maya's role in it has just begun. Before we wrap up, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more updates on this groundbreaking journey. You won't want to miss what happens next, as the battle for justice moves forward and more powerful stories unfold.